section. And I think it might be a message from the last show. But hopefully we're live. This is still probably still a stage of a test. But let's see. Okay. Live streams. Live now. And I believe, yeah, I can see myself.
We're good to go?
I'm just going to say hi. It's going to probably show up, I think.
Yeah.
I don't see it showing up yet. But, okay, so basically I started a live stream, but the old live stream is probably what people are checking into.
Okay.
So I will quickly go there and ask people to go to the right link. Just like you had pointed out the link that was not to the correct part.
Right.
Right. I still have some trouble trying to figure out how that works. So, just apologizing to everyone for a little bit of confusion that can come up as a result of that. And yeah, so
Okay, there we go. Okay, now I'm seeing it live now.
okay.
There we
And
go.
yeah, my other machine is not handling the live stream very well.
Okay.
And well, I guess I'll see something come up if it comes up. But
There we go. Let's get
it's
going.
on a, yeah, let's get going. So I like it. I like the little chat tool. Can you see it on your end?
I
Through
see it.
your
Yes, I see it there.
Isn't that kind of fun?
That is
Anyways,
cool.
anyways, um, today we have a really interesting topic to get into, which is basically effective communication and understanding vibrationally what's going on. Now that we understand that we're in a type of personal timeline interacting with other people and wanting to understand exactly how to relate to one another from a fifth dimensional perspective. Because fifth dimensional reality is where we're all headed. It's kind of like non-dualistic, essentially. It's the simplest way of putting it. But just I want to say, even though it's not an exciting topic, I do believe we should talk a little bit about the Brussels incident that happened this morning, since it happened to happen today. Don, do you want to
Yes.
share that while I let the train go by?
Sure. Um, again, we have a mass attack happening in a major city. This happened in Brussels this morning. I'm sure everybody knows about it. Some bombs went off at the airport, and
Okay, so we lost Don. Having a little bit of trouble with Skype. I'm going to call him back and ask him to not come on video. We've had issues with this in the past. And still, I think, it's worth looking into a better tool. For broadcasting. All right, Don, do you want to just stay off
say
camera?
I'll stay off camera
Yeah.
if you think that'll help.
We'll see how it goes,
Okay.
and maybe take our chances a little later.
Mm-hmm.
But you got cut off. Do you want to share just a little bit about just the brief summary if someone had not actually caught the news?
Well, if yes, well, I was just saying that I don't put a lot of, I don't give a lot of my focus to these things that as they're happening now, Paris or wherever it happens, just
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of know what behind the scenes, what is actually playing out. But bomb this morning, a couple of them in at the airport in Brussels and in a subway station. Um, Last I had heard, I think some 34 people had been killed and over 100 were injured. Um, I don't know personally and it was and the group that claimed responsibility for it is the that Islamic State that has been called by various names so far, ISIS and
Mm-hmm.
now I guess is the going name for it, the Islamic State.
Right. Um, so I'm going to briefly share a little bit from my perspective. I don't believe I've spoken publicly on the various terrorist attacks type of activity yet. So um, I really like um, the idea that we're visiting a reality in which certain things are changing, and terrorist attacks appear to be a way in which things are changing. But on the other hand, it's like terrorism is not well understood vibrationally. Okay. On the one hand, you say, terror is the idea of, using fear to manipulate people into taking action that you would find more preferable. Um, and Don, I think what I'm going to do is find a way to segue this into our conversation that we were going to
Oh yeah,
talk
I think
about.
as you started talking, I thought, oh okay, this is really going to be a nice flow.
Right. So, mind you, in this today, I don't have a direct message from Leonara, but she is one of my guides. So, a lot of the time when I'm talking, she's giving me little hints and pointers and sort of supporting me, uh, kind of like somebody who says, and say this, and remember to point this out, and note that this is a good point, and remember you talked about this once. Why don't you bring this up? Just in somewhat this way where I feel more comfortable keeping the flow of the conversation going forward. So it's not exactly like channeling, but it is aided. I guess that's probably the best term for
Hmm.
calling it. Um, because this is actually one of her areas of expertise, is in the realm of intersocial, we'll say, issues and expansion, the co-creation between individuals. Um, so what I'll say next is part of my experience and possibly something that's a bit new to me too, coming from her. that that kind of makes sense. Um, so the process of, and I'm not going to get into the Brussels specifically. We're going to talk about the concept of terrorism in general,
Exactly.
um, as it is a form of negotiating tool, right? Whether it looks like negotiations or whether it looks like manipulation, it is an interaction with a form of suggestion to others, as in we may call it a fact for us, but till somebody else accepts it as a fact, we're either educating another individual, or we're suggesting a fact to them, or we are presenting what we know or what we care about, or whatever it is. When it comes between communication from any individual to another, there is this um, there's this process vibrationally of basically facing an opportunity for someone's reality to be duplicated in another person's life. And that leads to what is commonly known as the consensus reality, for all case and purposes, in the fifth dimensional way of looking at things.
Hmm.
So when two individuals meet and have a reason for an interaction, whether it's, hey, let me tell you about something you should know about, or whether we're coming and asking, saying, can you tell me more about this? There's an opportunity for two people's experience to try to find a common ground. And maybe it's the common ground of the one who's delivering the information more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when viewing the information as the one that's receiving the information, it's a different relationship than the one who's offering the information. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the difference between that and negotiating, which is where two people are offering and two people are trying to receive and offer at the same time. Okay, so when somebody is offering information or an experience comes up, or somebody presents an intention, which is all that anyone can ever do, is present an intention. I can, for the sake of violence, I could punch you in the face, but it's up for you to interpret why you should get punched, why you get punched in the face. You may giggle and say, that was funny. You want to play fight or something? And my intention, even though it was meant to be like maybe violent or something, you still get to interpret it your own way, right? It may only graze you. It may not even faze you. Just like anyone who pulls a prank on you, you can laugh with them, or you can get mad at them. You get as the person receiving the information or the experience, or you get to have your response.
Participating in the experience.
Participating in the experience. Some people may be participating and not be as involved as others, right? Like witnesses, for instance, say a violent action or a comedic action or a loving action.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can use the Brussels thing for an example there, because you've got people participating in what needed to take place before the event in order to get it to happen. You've got people that participated in it because they were in a close proximity. You've got people participating now on a global basis because people have heard about it on the news. So there's different levels of participation for the same event.
Correct. Yes. And that point, that centers around the fact that everybody has their personal observation of the experience, right? And as we've talked about before, our personal observation of the experience is a personal reality, like as independent as you can understand the term independent. And the more you understand that, of course, you become more independent, and try to find ways in which to promote your personal independence and choice over your whole reality. I mean, there's degrees of independence that people are practicing in, less direct ways. Say maybe somebody wants to practice, the law of attraction or something, and that's, the degree in which they want to foster a new opportunity for themselves. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the extreme versions of experiences that we as witness, and share between us, such as the terrorist experience. Everybody has their own take on it, including the terrorists.
Right.
Okay, so-called terrorists, whatever it is. We still have our own interpretation. Is it even a terrorist? Is it a government, sort of like a false flag event or something? We even have our own interpretation. So I can't even say officially that I accept it as a full-blown terrorist activity, in the way that everyone else might look at it. I could call it even sort of like a form of manipulation from an even broader place than even the terrorists saw was going on, or the individuals physically involved. Okay, and so since everybody has their personal experience, I need to establish that as a ground point for the rest of the conversation. Since everybody has their own personal experience, which means that the experience is actually different from one individual to the next, okay? We can say that the experience is true, and yet it is still uniquely experienced individually. And you having an experience in the present is the only functional truth there is. It's the only truth that you can actually work with. And the closer to the present moment, the more useful the information lies in a way that you can share it, right? So that's why the news is really only useful, or not only useful, it's very useful when everybody's up to date with what, the news programs are putting out, correct? So the idea of approaching the present is the best way to offer a suggestion. So when we see, terrorist activity is much more visceral if you come across it within a short span of time. It's less visceral if it's, something from history. And it's less visceral if it's something that could happen. Because in the moment, we have our own observation that yields a lot of data. So the present moment always has the most data. Our memories have less data, and our future projections have less data. That's why the present moment is so powerful, because you have it's much more literal experience. Just like in relationships, right? Memories can be very powerful, but it's never the same as having the experience firsthand in a particular moment. So that's because there's lots and lots of indicators of what's going on. There's lots of vibrations that you can give attention to when not in the present or a future moment. You can't consider all the factors that will eventually be there. It's like, as they say, you can plan all you want, but when it comes down to the experience, you still have to be on the ball of your feet. You still have to be, nimble in a given situation. And that's basically true across the board with our experience, is that we're always in a position to try to understand all the elements that are at play, and we're always in that position where we are able to take on a degree of responsibility over what's going on by understanding that it centers around us fundamentally, that we don't have an ability to witness anything that is not relevant to something that is a part of us. Now, you may say, I'm not a terrorist, but, and I'm not saying that just because you witness terrorist activity that you have terrorism within you, in your blood or something, but if you've practiced believing in terrorists, that's enough for you to have the experience. Now, if your, wife or husband or closest friend happens to be a terrorist, I would suggest there may be something within you that is just a little bit terrorist about you. In maybe some quality of the way that the terrorism occurs, perhaps, or in this way where you're attracted to terrorists for some reason. Okay? So you'll note, and I'll make a note here, that many people do not understand that the whole world is a manifestation of, through the concept of law of attraction to extreme degrees. Basically, everything that you can witness with your five senses has been brought together for a personal front row seat experience. Okay? And that's what I'm calling your experience. Everyone's individual personal experience. It's your personal experience of the theater that goes on around you as requested by your vibration, which is your beliefs or your intentions or what have you that you practice in your mind. Okay? You practice a lot of things before you ever thought they came into your mind, and these are things that you grow up developing. So as you grow up in a culture, you don't remember learning about the culture, but you learn growing up how your parents act within the culture and your family, and you just you basically receive the guidance of a culture that you're in, and you get to live within it and explore it. So you may not feel that, hey, I don't remember thinking that I made a culture that acted this way, but at the same time, you're still participating in it, whether you're familiar with the initiation of the experience or not. Okay? So Skype has just dropped off, and I will call him back up here. All right, I've got you back.
I'm back.
Okay, cool. I was just finishing up.
Good.
So, Leonard, where were we going with this? Okay. Some inside stuff. So, where we're going with this is in the direction that when you begin to understand you have a personal experience, the difference between a person living in a three-dimensional life or a fifth-dimensional life is choices. Pretty much, it's the biggest obvious factor when living in either dimension. You get to witness from a perspective known as fifth-dimensional perspective. Okay, and in fifth-dimensional perspective, you can see more information. In other words, you're more sensitive to more information, and you're also willing to work with various forms of the extra information that you would normally not deem very useful, for instance. Now, I'm not just talking about fifth dimension like people are becoming psychic and they have the ability to use psychic information. It's a perspective that you can hold simply by not requiring everything to be dualistic, okay? Such as right and wrong. Like, working in the gray matter is a fifth dimensional practice. And if you work in the gray matter more and more, and you respect and be sensitive about within the gray matter the factors that play out within the gray matter, rather than just it's totally right or it's totally wrong or it's mostly right or mostly wrong, like where is it that this is not needing to be judged as one direction or another? Maybe there's lots of useful information going on here. And when a psychologist goes about approaching and analyzing something, we'll just say like in couples therapy, you'll note that he doesn't judge either one of them for being right or wrong. He just hears the information come forward. He just listens to each one's story and basically considers many more factors than would be just, whose side to pick in an argument if there's difficulty in a relationship. So fifth dimensional perspective is like that. It's basically allowing yourself to see and work with more information. Now, this doesn't require you to be more intelligent, but this does require you to listen to your emotional spectrum and your gut and basically feel out if there's something that doesn't quite make sense, which is another way of saying I am not fundamentally okay with the explanation at hand. Like, it's just not enough information for me. And so from that view, you may begin exploring, what else could this be? What else could be in play here? And everyone will notice, and I mean everyone, that when you calm yourself and you still yourself a little bit, say you want to learn something about why something pissed you off or pissed off somebody else, you'll note that when you're pissed off, there's only so many thoughts you can carry in your head, and you're going to have a reflection that suggests that everything is messed up. Like even the idea that something is appropriate, if your perspective is in the angle or the tangent of it's absolutely wrong from my experience, it's basically like judgment, does not allow you to open up and see other possibilities that are at play, or other probabilities, or other considerations. So when you're in a low vibration, and I think most everybody can agree they understand what this is, I don't need to define it. When you're in a low vibration, you essentially are cutting off potential avenues of data. And when you're in a high vibration, including excitement, you expand your ability to see more information. So this is why people have associated the idea of ascension or higher vibrations with being happy, is because that's basically how you're experiencing life from an area where more opportunities persist. So, for instance, if you're excited, you're basically seeing all the possibilities. You're exploring possibilities. You may get excited because the possibilities showed up, but you can run with it. Much like in the early exciting moments of a newfound romantic relationship. Your mind is going off in all the possibilities and all the potentials. And there can be quite a bit of energy flowing through the body during that time. And it can be very exciting, of course. And the excitement is the energy that's flowing through your body. It's literally like your blood vessels allow blood to flow through your body. The emotional spectrum shows you that the excitement is saying this is energy. And this energy is undefined. It's predefined as undefined. And as you practice something, you give it momentum into whatever it is that you're giving attention to. So, as in whatever thoughts you're having.
This is creation from the non-physical into the physical, where when you're talking about law of attraction, you can be talking about physical creation and physical manifestation of something that you want, but it's also an emotional possibility too. You're creating an emotion out of something that's non-physical and bringing it into the physical realm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leonard wants to explain that the lightest form of non-physical is basically like light particles or photons or something, and this has a version of, well, as we know, it moves at the speed of light because light does move at it is the smallest common physical denominator for our senses, and it is representative of a form of physical as it takes form and it shapes, much like how the sun rays of light have a great deal of potency behind them, and you can use that to to grow plants. Okay, just because the sunlight is there, the energy of the seed reacts and works with that photonic energy. Different than when you're using a flashlight. It's much more difficult to grow a plant off the flashlight because sunlight has a lot more frequencies within it. We're only able to observe so much, but you'll note it's a lot easier to look into a light bulb than it is at the sun, midday. That's because there's actually a lot of energy coming forward, and it's too much for your brain to actually work with. It's not designed to work with drinking from the fire hose sort of experience. Okay, so that being cleared, going to get back to topic, and that is in this space where we are looking to improve our lines of communication with other individuals. And essentially, I'm being reminded that all conversation with other individuals is in what we're saying to other individuals, whether we're conscious that we're talking with another individual or not. Whenever we're speaking, we are offering energy of a form, an energy of the form as defined by what we're saying, okay? And even with our feelings too. However, words are a bit more universal than feelings, so most people will catch on to the words predominantly versus what your feelings are. Note what you're projecting with your body, so if you start crying, you start smiling, that helps people connect to your feelings in that situation. So empathy does have to do with being sensitive to the physical body that another other person is demonstrating in their emotional spectrum. So we have communication. So we're always offering, and in the clear understanding of law of creation, all we can do is offer. Like ultimately, between one another, all we can do is offer our experience, ourselves, our thoughts. It is an offer, and it's up for the other person to find a way to relate with that information and receive it. This is really obvious when two people are speaking two different languages and they don't understand each other. I may be offering something, but if the other person doesn't understand or can't receive it in their experience the way that they feel comfortable that they're receiving it, then they can't actually process that as an offer. It's the lines of communication are not established. So, assuming that lines of communication are established and that two individuals are having an interaction, it is, there's a great number of ways in which people have communication for various reasons, but it takes a form where one individual is sharing something and the other individual is interpreting it in their own way. And it oftentimes in a place where we're telling a story or experience, such as a memory or something that we went through, we can check in and say, see if we can feel like the other person's following the line of thought, right? Like, is this too complicated? Am I losing you on this? Are we on the same page? And, some people have these things where like they say, okay, halfway through, almost like that's the period in the sentence. So if you were to read it, the actual transcription, you hear a lot of okays and you know what I means and don't you knows and A's, things like that. So in this place where we're asking to see that the other person is sort of following along, we're using feedback in order to go forward, because if we feel that the other person's not catching on, we might have to explain it another way and change, how we're saying it, or maybe introduce them to concepts that help us build our vibrational message that we're trying to share. Like if they don't know a word that we used, then it's an advanced word from the dictionary or something. Anyhow, pretty sure you all get this up to this point. This is where it starts to get exciting and interesting. Is the place where, since all we have to offer is that which we have to offer, the other side of the story is what is being offered. What am I seeing? And we could say your ability to interpret other people's meaning. Sometimes, they say, read between the lines or something like that. Or, I know some stuff about what you're telling me that you don't even know, and I can put the puzzle pieces together in a kind of a different way. And so even though you can listen, you are still making your own interpretation every time. You're still making your own interpretation, even if you don't understand, the language that the other person's speaking. You still are, neurons are firing in your brain, and you're still, interpreting the data. And as you focus on what you're interpreting, you can get an idea of how valuable the conversation is, or how valuable the data is in a given situation. So we talk about the terrorist information. That can be very pertinent to many people. Like, oh my God, I had a family member there. Very pertinent to see if, my family's okay. It may be very pertinent if I'm a news anchor. I need to know, the latest information. And for some people, it's not pertinent at all. So essentially, the offer of, terrorism, people are just like, I don't even believe terrorism. I believe it's all, false flag. And so, they don't even take it any further. Or they're excited to reveal false flags and share with people. You see another false flag? We got another false flag, for instance. So, as everyone's aware, we've met everybody from, the people who are pessimists to optimists to extremists to whatever, with regards to how they interpret information that comes forward. And with that being said, we visit the environment of choice. And oftentimes in a conversation, uh, we accept the other's offer implicitly as truth. In fact, the body does this by nature. Much like if you see something, it's true, right? I see a chair, I see a desk, I'm not questioning, it's true. And so when we
Right.
have people in front of us, we don't exactly question it because we don't have any reason to question it, or we don't have any context in which to question. We don't have any other insight, right? We can't say, is that true or not? I've not heard anything to the contrary. I've no data to suggest it's not true. When the person who's, the conspiracy theorist and looks at the experience and says, "Oh my God, there's all this data to suggest it is a false flag. Can you see that? Are you blind? Can't you tell?" And it appears that, on the one hand, he's extreme, but he is still experiencing his own reality. And we can say, whatever with his reality, I don't care, right? I don't care about whatever extreme ideas you have. And many of us are like that. We're not into a great deal of extreme information if it doesn't really do anything for us. Like if it's not really worth it for us. Like for instance, we don't watch, a lot of French television because a lot of us are not French. I know French, I could, but it's not interesting to me. But if a subject comes up, like what happened in Brussels, it's in French, it comes forward, I may say, if I'm interested in this, I may look at the French broadcast and see if there's any other details of information that's left out from the most of the Western information, you see. So there's always this opportunity to sort of like dig in and ask questions. So if somebody has something to offer to us, what do? We ask questions and see if there's more that we can gather from what the other person's offering. And we can say in the terrorist or the news anchors or just the experience that the terrorists are wanting everybody to gather, they may want some information to be on the surface and they may not want some other information to be on the surface. So whether they are, hiding some details or not, if we want to find out those details, it's up to us to, track that down or be, some sort of sleuth or detective about that, or trust in other detectives that do the same sort of process. Not going to go down that path too far because
Good. Okay.
Those are all just choices as examples.
And it's a relationship every step of the way, and there's a new one to be looked at no matter where you want to go with any of this information.
Yes. And so, whether you like Fox News or CNN, and there may be, only a couple differences between them, those differences are meaningful to you see. And so that's why you make a choice. You make a choice maybe just over someone's character or just maybe over some channel's political alignment, right? Because
Right.
that's
Well,
your alignment.
and for example, I find myself not having this dialogue right now with these events simply because I don't have a trusted source to go to for information on so many different levels, and therefore I don't really spend a lot of time with trying to dig into what was going on. Now, if I were in Brussels at the time today, that may be a different story, but I'm not.
Right. And that's a good point. I do want to point out that proximity has a lot to do with what stands out as an intense personal experience, right? So there's no argument. If you get to shake someone's hand, that's starting a stronger relationship more quickly than perhaps one that's done over the internet or over the phone or something like that. This idea of being in the other person's face allows you to work with more things like reading their emotions and sort of feeling their energy, and there's just lots more data in that place. So of course, if you were in Brussels, you would just, by the matter of fact of being in Belgium, it is in Belgium, right?
Yes.
You would have just a lot of more information. You have a lot of people talking about, I saw this, I saw that. There's probably a great litany of information that could be going on, even in just the rumor mill of the local environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go back to, I know I go off on tangents. That's kind of my specialty. I'm going to go to the point where what is a terrorist, offering us? It's offering us terror, right? It's offering us a suggestion to lower our vibration and accept the message that they did something very, very intense that affects us, like emotionally and psychologically. It gets our attention. So once you've got somebody's attention, whether it's a giant billboard, 50% off, or a terrorist action, once you've got someone's attention, that's like saying, in one way, it's like initiating a conversation. It's saying, all right, got your attention. Let's start trading ideas. Or let me offer ideas and see if you'll receive them or believe me or accept those. And since things like the television is a one-way broadcast, as in you can't say, hey, Mr. News Anchor, I think you're wrong. You can't, it doesn't, there's no precedent for actually countering or making a counter-argument with a news anchor, right? So we don't practice our initiative of choosing what our response is. We say that's just a fact. It's showing up. It's got to be a fact. If people don't lie by nature, there's no reason to. It's a fact. Now, if you take another step forward, you realize there is a reason why people lie, and there is a reason for manipulation. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but when you start feeling like something is not completely accurate that's coming forward, it's up to you to use your discernment, which is all your faculties, from using your gut to the information or sources that you already believe in to help you make a decision. You essentially just explore exactly what you're going to do with the information, right?
Okay, but here's my question, Julien.
Okay.
If the terrorist event is in a 3D capacity, it's a 3D conversation starter, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
Okay. There's got to be a 5D conversation that's going along with it. And what's the 5D conversation that is being started with a 3D terrorist act?
Okay, so in a terrorist act, I'll just share an arrangement of things that are going on, which basically suggests not just the idea that there's a straightforward agenda going on. Okay? In a terrorist environment, you have the individuals performing the terrorism that are extremists in their psychological profile. So essentially, they have some very, very practiced thoughts that they've practiced and are experiencing on a first-hand basis as their reality that may have absolutely nothing to do with your ordinary person. They may be following guidance that they've received from the organization itself. They may be inspired by lots of things that most people are not inspired by. They may be angry about things that a lot of people are not familiar with being angry about. And they also may be in a situation where they're not even themselves. They may be under a form of hypnosis. Okay? Aside from that, there's the experience of all the witnessers, as everyone who witnesses the experience. And everybody's got their own story, but you have individuals who have a greater investment. So you say, for those who have, a vested interest in those who got injured, they have a whole level of things that they're considering in their reality, and they may be telling other people, hey, take care of the injured. What about the people who are injured? We need to look out for them, and we need to protect other people from being injured. I'm really close with an experience where my family member's being injured, and so it's very intense for me. It's very present. It's very direct. And I got to share a message about, protect those from being injured, because that's what I feel should be the truth that everybody focuses on. And, in some cases it's for political reasons. This helps somebody who is trying to promote a anti-terrorist lobbying process in coming true. And oftentimes the terrorist lobbying process has a whole bunch of other elements that are being lobbied that go together in the same bill that have nothing to do with terrorism. They could be financially protecting interests in various ways. I don't have that information. There may be individuals who are wanting people to be afraid and to practice fear, as in lower the vibration by being in a state of anxiety. In anxiety, all you have are the intelligence of your animalistic response, fight or flight, and survival mechanisms. So in that place, there's not a lot of wisdom, as when you're in a place where you've got the time to think things out. So this panic response leads to a lot of short-sighted decisions. Okay, especially when it's very visceral for you. Like maybe you were just at the airport in Brussels. You feel like, oh my God, I just survive narrowly. Like I gotta approach life differently now. Like terrorists. I need, I got away from this one, but will I get away from the next one? All sorts of thoughts can present themselves. And the way that everybody is communicating, whether it's the news outlets or whether it's your neighbors, they're all presenting their experience the way that they witnessed it and the way that they're offering. So the news may be sharing what a political, a presidential candidate is sharing, because it works with them to further the aim of that political party, to share that information, and the agenda of the future possible president is trying to say, in this kind of given situation, this is what I would do in the future. So vote for me because I'm either going to protect you or I've got this sort of approach to it. So it works tremendously in the favor of giving a platform for political agendas to come forward. Now, I'm not suggesting that those in the space of running for office are staging this for their own benefit of speaking their platform, but it does give them a discussion that people are going to pay attention to. You will take note of what the candidates are saying, for instance, more likely than perhaps giving them attention on another occasion or other average days. What did you say? Don? Okay, I've got Skype is saying it's got a bit of an internet connection with him, so I'm going to recall him up. How's everybody in the chat room doing? Following along? I see we're talking about Hazel a little bit. My daughter. All right. While I'm restarting Skype to get Dawn back into the conversation, the point that we were getting to was in the direction of, what we were just talking about is what's the fifth dimensional way of understanding a terrorist attack. And I gave a very general overview, but the actual experience for somebody who lives fifth dimensionally is even more acutely strange, one individual to the next. You may say, well, everybody, if you're fifth dimensional, you all see it the same way. We all know it's a false flag, or we all think it's, Illuminati, or we all think it's, for political gain, or we all think it's because the terrorists have a very poignant message of, Western world is going down or something. It's, even from a fifth dimensional perspective, all those are potential thoughts that you can practice. Okay? However, in the fifth dimensional way of receiving information, there's a different kind of discernment. There is this of value to me? And there is the awareness that some have who are beginning to practice fifth dimensional awareness, that choosing the more...
Julien, are you showing online?
Am I?
Yeah.
Uh,
You're gone. I lost you for several minutes, and I
and the
think
online